We live in a culture of abuse and rape. We live immersed in a socio-cultural context which normalizes acts of violence, especially if those are combined with gender prejudices. So it seems licit to diminish the abusive behavior, placing it into the realm of game. So it's just a joke. A rape even can be defined as just a joke. Moreover, the attention is focused on the victim, on the abused person. And so the judgment is on the person abused reactions instead of judging the actions of the one who abuses. This is a very toxic and distorted culture with very, very toxic consequences, both on an individual and collective psychological level. And the consequences of this can affect negatively our relationships with ourselves, with other people, with a partner, our sexual relationship. Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality, which I created and theorized, has an explanation and also a structured solution for this. Therefore, how can I heal my sexuality after verbal or sexual abuses?
Hi, I am Maya Vassallo di Florio. In this space, I answer the most common questions about personal blooming and empowerment. Touching philosophical, spiritual, cultural, and social themes, I support you in making the difference in the world. I'm here to guide you blooming in the marvelous creature you are, one petal at a time.
Welcome to this new Aphrodisia episode. We are in the month of love, which is February, and this month I'm gonna talk a lot more about love, sex, and relationship. Before I start, I want to remind you that there will be my amazing free online workshop on the 7th of February at Italian 9 p.m. And you can sign by clicking in the link in the description to have access to those precious free contents, exercises, practices, and lots of shifts of mindset that you can benefit, from which you can benefit during this workshop I'm going to offer you. You will have the chance also to save the event on your calendar and check what time it will be in your country when I will offer the workshop. So there will be lots of surprises, so don't miss it. Really sign it on your calendar and subscribe by clicking in the link in the description. Today's episode is very, very, very delicate and very hot, and there's a lot of talking about this. And it is born after a question that two of my students asked me. They are Monica and Raffaella, who asked me, Maya, how can we nourish our sexuality independently from the other one in the couple, especially when the other person doesn't care about sexuality or diminishes it? And this was Monica's question. Raffaella's question was, how can my sexuality be affected if I've been a victim of a verbal and sexual abuse? And how can I heal my sexuality, therefore? These are very, very hot topics, and I'm honored to answer them through this episode. As every Aphrodisia's episode, these are sessions of coaching, spiritual and personal coaching for your spiritual and personal growth, using Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality method. So I really hear you if you had these kind of problems, if you underwent such a terrible experience. I hear you and I'm totally with you with all my heart. And today I really want to offer you something precious to help you to overcome the pain and start blossoming again into Aphroditic pleasure. So let's proceed in the exam of this question, and let's proceed in a structured solution according to Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality. First of all, what is sexuality? This is important to define. The link to a previous Aphrodisia episode in which I developed profusely the theme of Aphroditic sexuality. So you can listen to it if you want to go deeper into the theme. But in general, we can define healthy, Aphroditic, sacred sexuality, the vital energy that we feel within, the vital energy that moves us into the world, the vital energy that is the fire that burns within us. It can be called the chi, for example, or the prana. It has different names according to the various parts of the world and the various traditions. But it's really, if lived sacredly, if it's a healthy sexuality, so not a sexuality lived as a taboo, nor a sexuality lived as pornography. None of those. Those are both toxic sexuality. I'm talking about Aphroditic sexuality in which we approach sacredly to sexuality, which is the energy thanks to which we are here on this planet. If you want to know more about Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality and sacred sexuality, you can try reading my book, which is just in Italian for now, but you're very welcome, as many students from all over the world are doing, and they're communicating with me. They're reading it in Italian, even if they don't speak Italian, and that's amazing. I'm really grateful for that. Second point, we have to understand what is violence and abuse. Why do I say so? Because we live in a society that does gaslighting, confusing us since we are born, since the very moment we come into the world. So for many people, it's really difficult to distinguish between what's abuse and what's joke, what's defined normal, but is not normal. So with my students, I always say, let's map the abuse. Let's name the abuse, because naming and mapping are the first steps to understand where is the problem, what is the problem, the entity of the problem, and therefore we can start building up a solution, getting out of the unpleasurable situation and going towards the desired state, which is happiness. Not toxic happiness, being always happy, but a state of being which is called Aphroditic by me. There are different kinds of abuse: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional, psychological abuse, which can be verbal or physical even. So regarding physical abuse is a lack of respect towards the other people's body, damaging other people's body. So like hitting the body or doing something with the other people's body, which is with no consent. Sexual abuse is physical abuse with sexual implications. So it can be a physical penetration without consent, but it can be also touching the other people's body in sexual places without consent. And sexual abuse can be also verbal. Emotional and psychological abuse, it can be physical, it can be verbal, it can be having power over the other person and conditioning the other person's life and behavior. Also, silence can be emotional and psychological abuse. Let's stress that, please. I repeat it, even silence can be emotional and psychological abuse. It can be a little bit unexpected. That's why it's so important to map violence and abuse and to name what is violence and what is abuse. With regards to children, there is another kind of abuse, which is lack of care. It can be physical lack of care, so not taking care of the baby physically, affective lack of care, educational lack of care, medical lack of care. And that makes me sadly smile. It's a sad smile. It's very sarcastic and ironic, because if we look at many citizens all over the world, it seems that the state is behaving abusively towards many of us, lacking a lot of care. But this is another chapter that we want to consider here and now. So this is just an overall view to help you understand which kinds of abuse there are, but it's important that you map what you recognize as abuse and what's not an abuse. The majority of time you will discover that you were victim of abuse, but that is normalized. What is important to name in order to solve a problem. So let's map the abuse, please. Do it. Take time. I know it's painful, but take time to do it. How can any kind of abuse affect our sexuality? It can produce lack of self-esteem, lack of self-love, lack of capacity of expressing ourselves into the world, therefore, because to express as human beings into the world, we need the fire, we need the will, we need the self-esteem. If we don't feel self-esteem, we won't have energy, nor will, nor power, nor trust in life to express ourselves. And the lower is our self-esteem, the more we will walk into this planet as walking deads. Sometimes the lack of self-esteem can be so disruptive that can produce psychosomatic damages and even terrible illnesses, which are manifested also physically. If we lack self-esteem, if our sexuality is affected by acts of violence, our vitality and our sexuality is lower down, because, as we said, sexuality is vital energy, and there will be less desire of communicating with the other, with a partner or with whomever, where communicate comes from the Greek komouni. Mouni means gift, as the amazing philosopher Genevieve Bourne writes in her remarkable books about gift economy. Mouni is gift. Communicating is sharing of gifts. Sexuality is communion, communicating of bodies and souls. There is no will to communicate if our sexuality is drowned and if we are devastated by being victims of violence and abuse. So there won't be any desire of sharing those gifts of the body and of the self and of the soul through sexuality, nor to give it, nor to receive it. Considering that as human beings, we gather informations about reality and we form our mindset according to the mirror neurons, we have to remember that we proceed for imitation. So education, which comes from the Latin word educere, so inviting into manifestation some qualities into the human being, hopefully good qualities, into this scenario means that the education, which is based on imitation, will be an imitation of something toxic if we have been victims of abuse. And therefore, what will happen? I will treat myself and I will let other people treat me as I've been always treated, or as my traumas taught me to be treated, normalizing it. So there will be a tendency which will be stratified on the stratified memories of the person and of the body. This looks terrible, but the good news is that we can change the informations. We can re-educate ourselves. And that's really so true. And that's what I do with Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality. There is a solution if you've been a victim of any kind of violence, any kind of abuse. There is a solution. There is a way out. So it doesn't have to be like there always and forever. Okay. Which are the solutions? Let's get into the core of today's episode. First solution is psychological therapy. So I really, really encourage people to start a psychological path. I don't even call it therapy. Sometimes it can be a little bit scaring for some people. There are still lots of prejudices about psychological paths. And I think people shouldn't go to the psychologist just because they have a problem. But to make a path of life, to follow a path of life, just as we follow a spirituality, a philosophy of life, the psychological side and the psychological aspect can be really precious. So the first way out is starting a psychological path, for which I really support people. The other way is Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality, which I teach, which is based on sacred sexuality. And it can be done with the psychological therapy, working amazingly together. The solutions Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality offers are at different levels, individual and social. When speaking of the individual level, my work is a spiritual approach, an energetic approach through shamanic techniques, tantric techniques, and yoga techniques, and techniques of coaching in an holistic view, obviously. Speaking about the social level, all my work is based also on a social level and on education, where educating means inviting into manifestation the best qualities, in this case, of human beings. I do a lot of activism and I enact culture. So I try to craft culture with you through education. And I do a lot of conferences and I try to spread Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality and new and healthier models of existence through social media, for example, like this Aphrodisia project and this episode you're listening to right now. I do conferences in the schools. I do lots of conferences in the universities. Whenever I'm invited, I did conferences in the best universities totally for free, because on a social plane, on a social level, it is really, really my desire to change the paradigm into a healthier one. Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality is a spirituality, but it's also a vision, a way of living, a mindset, a way of inhabiting the world as human beings. So that's why I do a lot of work on a social level pro bono. If you want to know more, if you want to study with me, if you need some help through Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality, you will find below in the description the link to start private sessions with me. Or I want to remind to you again to subscribe to the workshop Transform Yourself into a Jewel, which will take place on the 7th of February. Remember to subscribe, because there will be lots of contents which can be really, really helpful for you and change your life forever and for the better. But apart from studying with me, I want to give you today something very useful which you can start using from now. So one is a series of questions of self-coaching, and one is an advice. Start healing your body, informing your body that you can feel the pleasure again. Feeling pleasure is safe, and affirm yourself. Use the positive affirmations while you touch your body, especially in the places which you like the most to be touched. This way you will use the logos, the word, the positive affirmations, but you will stick them to the body. In this way you will inform your nervous system that you are safe feeling pleasure again. You are safe opening up to pleasure again, and do it several times. You can do it with some music, incense, candle lights, And while you dance, just caress your body and tell your body, put memories in your body through your words and through the touch, becoming aware really into the flesh that you deserve pleasure and you can open up to pleasure. It's safe. Because if you just use positive affirmations, it isn't enough. Your body really needs to understand it. While with regards to the self-coaching questions, you can take a pen and a piece of paper and write these questions down for you to answer. So these questions I'm giving you are keys for your unconscious to find a solution. First question is, what happened? What did I suffer? What did I undergo? Second question, can I call it abuse? Which kind of abuse? Physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, psychological? Which kind of abuse? This will be very important for you, as I said before, because it will help you mapping and become conscious of something that it's very painful and very probably you put under your unconscious. Third question, how did I feel? This is important to acknowledge your emotions, to see them, to express them, even in a written form. This is very important, so honor your emotions. We assist to a lot of toxic positivity, saying everything all right, this is so new age and so terrible. It had lots of negative consequences on so many of my students from all over the world. So please take some time and use Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality method and start honoring your emotions and feeling them into your body. Only this way you can heal them. Fourth question, which strategy would I use if I find myself again into that situation? Fifth question, which thoughts and actions can I adopt in order to prevent, for what is possible, obviously, that it happens again? I want to do a disclaimer here. This question doesn't mean we always have to live in anxiety and fear, trying to prevent every one of our problems, every one of our preoccupations, every one of our worries. Doesn't mean that. We can relax and use wisdom taken from the experience. Wisdom helps us to live better, not to live in a contractive state of the body and of the mind. We don't want to be contracted, because if we are contracted, we cannot grow as the cellular biology teaches us. The cell to expand needs to be relaxed and trust in life. While if we are scared, we will be contracted and all our energies will be focused on defending ourselves from something. So I'm not inviting you to be always in a defensive state. I'm just asking you to acknowledge and to prevent and to adopt thoughts and actions that keep you safe. Just that. Another disclaimer, the question doesn't suggest that everything depends on us. If we are abused, it's just the abuser's fault, nobody else. We cannot control everything and not everything depends on us. The question doesn't mean that we had it coming. No. If we were abused, there is no responsibility from our side. Okay. And absolutely, we have to do our part to change the mindset, our mindset, and do our part to change the world, because we really want to live in a safe world, don't we? So while we do our part to change the world and change the culture and give our contribution so that everybody could feel safe on this earth, in the meanwhile, we need to protect ourselves. So the question, which actions and thoughts can I adopt in order to prevent and be safe, means that we can adopt a state of being and a behavior and words that express our assertivity, and help us lead our intuition. It's like a state of being described by the amazing cantadora and psychologist from Mexico, Clarissa Pinkola Estés, who wrote Women Who Run with Wolves. It's about smelling the dangers, smelling the air, and understanding if we are safe or if we are not. And if we are not, run away. It's about understanding the limit, placing the limit, setting healthy boundaries. It's about loving and protecting ourselves, keeping us safe and at ease and in love. So, of course, we have a cultural, social problem to solve. We are doing it. That's the message of Aphroditic philosophy and spirituality. That's what I'm teaching. That's what I'm talking about in the universities and in every place where culture is crafted. But while we do it, while we change the world, love yourself. Well, I hope this episode was very useful for you. I'm looking forward to meeting you on the 7th of February at Italian 9 p.m. Remember to register by clicking on the link below. And as always, if you want to support Aphrodisia's project, the best way to do it is to share these episodes and the other episodes with all the other people out there which feel lonely and confused, so that they may know there is another way of living which is possible and is real, and we are doing it, we are making it, we are crafting it. Another way to support is writing a feedback. If you're listening to the podcast, you can take 1 second to leave 5 stars. Or if you're listening from YouTube, you can write down your written feedback and I will read it and answer to it personally with great, great pleasure. And as always, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast and click on the bell to receive a notification anytime a new Aphrodisia episode is born. As always, meet you on next Thursday and on the 7th of February for the workshop Transform Yourself into a Jewel, which is totally free for you. Mwah.